What's up, Scyushi Squad? We back in some more Trove patch notes. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking about the Paragon update first and foremost today. If I can squeeze it in, I'll try and have a video that talks about the latest event, because obviously the event is more so going to affect those of you on console, because the Paragon update is exclusive to PC right now, and it's pretty cool. They ended up doing some last minute changes. Ignore that. It just still tilts me. They ended up changing the limit to the amount of battle tokens that you can keep, and it's kind of dumb, but they changed a few other things with Battle Royale as well. But generally speaking, they changed some stuff last second, and it's a pretty poggin update. So anyways, before we get into it, gotta let you guys know, if you're new to Trove, you can use the sign up link down in the description, and then anything you end up buying out of the cash shop, I'll make a percentage of that. Say hello. I didn't know there was a new store pack. I guess I'll have to do a review of that. Burgers 134152. What the heck is this? Very odd. Very, very odd. And also, before you guys ask, because I know you're already typing it out in the comments, when does the Paragon update come to consoles? We don't know. We didn't even know when it was coming to PC. It just suddenly, like, a couple days ago was like, hey, it's coming out on the 16th. And it was like, okay, cool, I guess. I didn't have any time to prepare for it, so here we are. So there's quite a lengthy introduction, and then there's Paragon Levels, Prime Paragon Pinatas, Ringcrafting, and so on and so forth, which they have a huge section talking about each of the different class ring abilities, which I'll slowly end up making videos on all of that over time, so subscribe if you haven't. Bomber Royale updates, store updates, additional updates. So that's just a big summary of everything we're going to be going through, because this is going to be, it's going to be a lengthy video because it's a pretty lengthy patch notes. So the introduction is: Paragon Levels allow players who have reached maximum level to continue earning benefits from the many experiences generated activities within Trove. So since the system is effectively infinite, the rewards from Paragon Levels do not increase player power on a per level earned basis. So you basically don't earn anything by actually doing Paragon Levels other than earning a new currency, but I've got my criticisms towards it, and we'll get into it. Basically, they're used, like, you'll get a Paragon level after level 30, you can keep getting XP, so on and so on and so on. And it's basically going to give you a bunch of resources that you'll then end up using for the crystal rings, which I have in our video that already goes into detail, so we don't super have to touch upon every little bit that is this patch. I'll kind of skim through the introduction and I'll explain it better because it's a bit wordy. But generally speaking, yeah, you can end up crafting the crystal rings, and then the crystal rings are going to end up being down here. You can actually get these crafting posts all in your club world, which we did have, but I wanted to show you guys this guy. And then the crystal rings are instantly better than stellar rings. So stellar rings just, they became absolutely useless overnight. And then the rings also have hidden effects. So you can see just behind my face cam here, I'll try and duck out of the way. Hidden effects is cliffhanger and need for speed. So the way that you actually obtain those hidden effects or modified abilities of the class is by polishing the rings. So you would end up using various resources to polish the ring and so on and so forth. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So anyways, there is up to crystal 4 rings, and that's it. The odds of getting a C4 ring, though, are really, really low. So if any of you guys got a C4 ring, you can flex down in the comments if you want. And whether or not you're actually using the modified ability. The modified ability, as you saw, is actually temporary. So I've got it for 13 more days. Can this thing stay on my screen? 13 more days before it goes away. But anyways, we'll get into that a little bit later. So Paragon Levels, first and foremost. So reach level 30 and then you can keep leveling past that. Paragon Levels don't provide stats or anything like that. However, when you do end up leveling up, you get specific, like, you get Trovian loops is one of the new resources, and Prime Paragon Levels, which are, it's so stupid and so nerdy. I hate it. So there's normal levels, like every level is just a Paragon level past level 30, right? And that gives you a Trovian loop. But in order to end up getting a Prime Paragon level, it's literally tied to every prime number up to 1,000 before, like, basically you can get 1,000 Paragon levels and then it'll reset back to 1, and so on and so on and so forth. So prime Paragon levels are tied to prime numbers, which is kind of stupid, but generally speaking, what a prime Paragon level is going to do is give you, what is it? You'll get prime Paragon loops, or prime loops, I guess, but they're going to be class specific. So basically, if you want to get a prime loop for the Lunar Lancer, you have to get your Lunar Lancer to a prime level in the Paragon tree, right? Okay, I know it sounds confusing. I don't know why it is so dumb and clustered. Like, it's really stupid. They really should have made it so that Paragon levels was every 5 or 10 levels or something. But either way, these loops are going to end up being required in order to craft class-specific rings and so on and so forth. But again, we'll get into that a little bit later. So there is also going to end up being, loops for the crystal rings. And then there's 2 new badges that are available related to Paragon levels, which these are quite disgusting. Gameplay, I think. Yeah, so there's Paragon levels. So they want you to get 40 levels times 6. So 40 levels with 6 different classes, which is very, very odd, but okay, whatever. That's already ridiculous. That's like months of work. And then ring polishing. They want you to polish 100 rings, which, keep in mind, in order to end up polishing a ring, you need a prime Paragon loop, which in order to get the prime loop, you have to get prime levels. And there's only a limited amount of prime levels within level 1 to 1,000, and it's a headache and a half, okay? So check out my crystal ring video if you guys want more detail on that, because, oh good lord, it looks like the ally is his head. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's so good. So in addition to granting primal loops, prime Paragon levels will also grant you Paragon Pinatas, which we've already covered that on the channel as well. So it's an opportunity to gain immediate rewards found in Primal Paragon Pinatas. These rewards can include most of the items from Prime Paragon Pinatas, generally at a higher drop chance. But will not drop or Glim, Flux, the Style Unlockers, or Prime Paragon Pinata Mount. Wait, what are they saying? Okay, so it's explained very, very poorly, but to my understanding, every time you get a Prime Paragon level, you'll get Paragon Pinatas and also get an immediate reward that can be items from the Primal Paragon Pinatas, excluding the mount, so I don't know what the point is, but okay. The Pinatas can also end up dropping Primal Paragon cubes very rarely, and will extremely rarely drop golden signatory ring boxes for the currently active class. Okay, cool. So if running low on primal loops, the Celestial Paragon Provisor at the... Jesus Christ. Okay, so this guy right here, you can end up using the crafting bench, and you can actually trade in your Trovian loops for a Paragon Cube, which the Paragon Cube can then be exchanged to give you a Primal Loop for your active class, as it says right there. There's a limited amount of these ones that you can end up buying per week, so I'd recommend you probably want to buy like max capacity of these all the time, just because these ones are going to cost 10 Trovian Loops, whereas the regular ones are going to cost 15. So I'm going to do my best to hopefully be able to buy all 3 of these per week, just because they're going to end up being quite useful. As much as I want to read through the patch notes here, it's just a cluster truck of information just thrown at the player without much context to it. So maybe I'll just kind of skim through it and just kind of give you guys an actual summary in English of what this actually is. Like, A for effort, guys, but good lord. So the Primal Paragon Cubes, yeah, we already just explained that. So though it may take a long time to reach Paragon level 1000, doing so will achieve a Millennia rollover. That class will loop back around to level 0, allowing them to recollect all previously earned rewards. I personally think they should lower that number from 1000, because the whole thing is that since prime loops are tied to prime numbers, there's less and less prime numbers the closer you get to 1000. So ironically, it is actually worse to have a higher Paragon level than it is in the early game, because at the early game you're going to be getting tons and tons of prime Paragon loot, for the class, and then as you get further and further, the numbers become less and less frequent, so you will actually be less and less likely to end up being able to polish your ring, which I guess that's where this these boxes end up coming into play. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, sure. Okay, so anyways, Prime Paragon Pinatas. So this is basically the pay-to-win aspect of the update. So Primal Paragon Pinatas can be gotten through the following methods. One Prime Paragon Pinata is added to the player's inventory when reaching a Prime Paragon level, with an addition of 1 extra if you have Patron. Primal Paragon Pinatas can be purchased for credits from the Celestial, from this idiot right here. Extremely overpriced. Don't ever buy these. It's actually a ripoff unless you are just some freak that has like so much money that you don't even care about your financial well-being. Then go for it, because the thing is, these are extremely overpriced considering the lackluster rewards you get out of them. And the Primal Paragon Pinatas that you end up actually getting from your Prime levels are tradable, and you can sell them for a lot of flux. And because so many people are selling these, it's actually more cost effective to buy credit pouches, sell those, and then just buy Prime Paragon Pinatas on the market. That might change over time. Either these pinatas will become more expensive as more people get higher in Paragon tiers, or more than likely they'll end up getting a lot cheaper just because everybody can actually obtain them. So don't even bother like buying them. It's so stupidly overpriced. Like I wouldn't be against, you know, I'm not against like spending money on Trove, but this just clearly, they just threw a random number associated with these. They didn't actually think it through. So anyways, in addition to ore, flux, and whatever else, these pinatas can obtain Trovian loops. They can also very rarely contain a new mount, a new set of wings, new weapon styles and helmet styles, and a new weapon and helmet aura. I've actually got a video that shows everything you can get out of these bad boys, excluding there's a separate video that actually shows the Primal Paragon wings that I ended up just putting out the other day, so you guys can check those out if you want. So they also contain Primal Paragon cubes, Paragon marks, and Paragon marks are kind of a weird side item that is literally used to craft all of these cosmetic items, so like wings and mounts and junk like that. And there's Primal Paragon marks right here. As far as I know, the Paragon marks are tradable. Yes. Wait, what are they called? Paragon's marks. Okay, so Paragon's, whoop. Yeah, okay, so they are tradable. Way too expensive, as you might expect, because it's such a new item. But the fact still remains that a lot of the items in this update are tradable, and that's why, despite the fact that I still have my heavy criticisms about how this update was delivered in terms of how they moderated all the content and so on and so forth, generally speaking, the fact that almost everything is tradable with this update means that I actually regress a lot of my initial criticisms of the update, because if it's all tradable, it's all good, because it means that it's not just something that you have to obtain as a singular player, you know, and that's one of my biggest criticisms with this game, is that it acts like it's not an MMO. So the Primal Paragon Pinata mount that you can get will actually be loot collected into 15 Primal Paragon Pinatas. So, okay, cool. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the Ringcrafting. So players can now reach Ringcrafting level 300, and then that's going to be way down here, and you'll see that I can only craft certain ones of these, because these ring boxes will actually require the Primal loop, I should say, sorry, related to the specific class. These can't be traded. Prime loops you still have to grind yourself, which kind of sucks. Now, there's a couple things that I'll get into just here in the crystal rings, just because I already, like I said, have another video that highlights it in much more detail, so we'll kind of summarize it as if you guys know what I'm talking about. But basically, with the prime loops, so I have a couple prime loops on my Neon Ninja, which means that I can craft a signatory box that gives me a crystal ring that has Neon Ninja stats. Now, the thing is, if I end up crafting this bad boy right here, opening the ring box, and you'll see that we actually have so we got a crystal 1 ring. But here's the thing. The hidden effects are the only thing that takes into account the class. So because I crafted a Neon Ninja ring, it means that the hidden effects are going to end up being the class specific abilities for the Neon Ninja. Okay, cool. You're working with me here. So the point is that I could actually use this ring on any class that I want. It's just the only way that I could end up benefiting from the hidden abilities is if it was on the Neon Ninja. So what I would actually recommend that you do is just craft a crap ton of crystal rings and put them on whatever class that you want. right? Because it's not super important to end up using the hidden abilities, because generally speaking, most of them suck. Some of them are actually really, really good, but most of them are pretty bad. So the other thing that you can end up doing is when you end up loot collecting the crystal rings, so you'll notice right here that there's actually a couple different items we can get out of this. So we'll actually end up getting a Trovian loop and some of our crystals or gems back from Ringcrafting, but you'll also notice that little piece of paper. So what that little piece of paper is, this is where things go big mode and get really annoying, is that the box that I ended up initially crafting contains one ring with hidden effects, and it can end up being any tier of crystal ring. It can be crystal 1 to crystal 4 if you're super duper lucky. However, if you want to increase your odds, you'll end up having to craft these boxes, which will give you a crystal 2 ring or better. And how do you end up crafting them? Well, it requires another primal loop, so double dipping, but it also requires the ring crafter's ticket, which is the item that we get for loot collecting other crystal rings. You're working with me here, because it goes even further than that, because if you end up loot collecting a crystal 2 ring and higher, you'll end up getting this, or a crystal 3 ring and higher, sorry. So you'll end up getting a gilded ring crafting ticket, which is used to craft these boxes, which are literally going to end up triple dipping on your primal loop, costing pretty much all the exact same resources outside the fact that this can be a guaranteed crystal 3 ring or better. So generally speaking, the fact that you would have to craft like 3 of these is just, if you have it, okay, sure, cool, whatever. But generally speaking, I would avoid going for these at all costs and just stick to the smaller boxes, just because your odds are generally going to be better, I guess. But I don't know, it depends. If you've got the extra gilded ring crafters tickets just because you got extra rings, okay, good on you. But here's the cool thing. All of these ring boxes are tradable. And as you can see, people are really like, this is not worth 4 mil. No, 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 no. I don't know why people think that people would actually be stupid enough to buy those. But that's the cool thing, is that all of the ring boxes themselves are tradable. So not the rings themselves. Those, as far as I know, yeah, can't be traded. But the boxes can. So that's actually really, really cool. And again, alleviates a lot of my criticism. I would tear into this update and say how stupid all of this is, but the fact that it's all tradable means I'm a happy camper. Even if I don't end up participating in the trading function of it all, I think that it's always awesome when the game ends up having that stuff. So anyways, moving on, depending on the ring that you end up crafting for whichever class, it's going to end up giving you either physical or magic damage. So you craft a Neon Ninja ring, it's always going to give you physical. So keep that in mind if you're trying to put the crystal rings on your other classes and so on and so forth. Like I've got a C3 ring here that I got really, really lucky for my Shadow Hunter that I could probably end up just using on another character. Now the other thing too is that the, these rings are not only going to end up having light value on them, the stats are way higher, the power rank is a lot higher, but it also has the secondary stat, or in this case, because light takes up the secondary slot, the third stat, whatever, that is not randomized. Like, you can't randomize the second stat on these rings. So whatever you end up crafting, you're stuck with it. So that is where I think a lot of people will end up getting the wrong stats, and that's where they'll end up loot collecting them and just passively getting all of the items from them, because generally speaking, yeah, it's pretty bad. So speaking of double dipping, the ring polisher is quite literally going to end up being the way that you apply the hidden effects. And in order to end up polishing a ring, you'll see that it's going to end up costing you another prime loop for that specific class. So that's where these crafted boxes would really come into play, because maybe you're not getting prime loops on the specific character or whatever. And then once it's activated, it's going to be activated for 10 days plus 4 extra days if you have patron. Yeah, and then otherwise the effects themselves. So there's going to be 2 hidden effects on every ring, but there's actually 3 different abilities for every class, meaning that these are also going to be very random, because when you craft the ring, it's going to end up having the secondary stat be random, and then you're stuck with that. And then whatever the abilities are, you're going to be stuck with those as well. So just keep that in mind. So like I said, I'll try my best to end up having a video at some point. You gotta bear with me. It's gonna take a long time to do something like that, where I'm gonna try and have a video that's gonna show all of the different polished abilities, so all the hidden effects. Generally speaking, I already have a video that kind of talks about a lot of these, because these are the modified abilities that were generally just tested and tried out, you know, on the test server. But I'm still going to read through these. It's just I don't have a real world example, okay? And I might end up having another video that just talks about these abilities in general, because we could be here all day just talking about this. So I'll try and get through this as quickly as possible. I do also want to mention that they do say that each day of polish expires at 11 a.m. UTC time zone. So it's just the normal Trove reset time. So do not polish your ring just before the daily reset, okay? Because otherwise you just can't end up losing a day, which is like, ew. So when the ring polish runs out, you can spend an hour prime loop. Each of these class specific crystal and signatory ring boxes comes with 2 available hidden effects, and each class currently has 3 hidden effects total. So let's go through all of them. So the Knight, Iron Will is going to increase the damage redirection done by Iron Will, and the Knight gains increased damage reduction. Basically his shield, as far as I know, right? Because that's what Iron Will is called. Not that I ever end up reading what any of these abilities are. Yeah, Iron Will. So it's basically going to end up giving you more resistance. I really wish, like, devs, I know you're not watching, but if you are, can you please change your patch notes so that it gives us percentages? Like, I'm sick and tired of everybody having to always guess what stats we're actually getting and what benefits we're getting. I would rather it just outright say it. So overcharge, which I think is just charge in general, right? So overcharge, using charge gives a movement speed increase temporarily. So that would probably be your go-to ability that you're using on the Knight. Potentially could end up making it a little more viable for speed farming. And then last ability for the Knight is Smashing. Damage dealt by smash reduces the cooldown of Iron Will by 1 second. I like this. I like the idea of having abilities that complement a certain playstyle, even if using your Iron Will is pretty useless on the Knight, just because enemies are going to one-shot you anyways, and you're building your Knight towards DPS as you would with pretty much any character in the game. But I do like the idea of that, even though generally speaking, the only one for practicality is going to end up just being the movement speed buff. And also, fun fact, those of you that are sitting there going, but the Knight sucks. No, the Knight's never sucked. The Knight had to just rework like a year or 2 ago, and it's actually been pretty good since then. So anyways, Chloromancer. Let's move on. Phyto Barrier creates a shield at low health that reduces damage. Useless. Weird Growth. After dealing damage, gain a buff that spawns plants randomly nearby for a short time. So if that can spawn additional plants over the limited amount that you can actually put down on the Chloromancer, that could actually be really, really good. But check this out. Gatling is... Okay. Basic attacks have a chance to spawn a mini green Gatling. Mini green Gatlings have a chance to spawn mini green Gatlings. So basically that would end up being the best one for Chloromancer. I guess I don't want to go into super detail about all of these because I kind of want to just, you know, otherwise we're going to be here all day, like I said. So we'll kind of just move it along here. But you can kind of just pick your poison and decide what ability you think is best. But I'm still going to give you my feedback and say that the Gatling one would be the best, just because it seems like that's the most amount of extra damage. Because you're going to prioritize either doing extra damage or more movement, depending on what the abilities are. So for the Bard, Peaceful Moment. Peaceful Song buff reduces damage done to allies. Useless. Musical Master. The Bard gains a critical damage buff when all 3 Bard Song buffs are active. So if you like having all of your Bard Song buffs, and if that's the gameplay style that you like with the Bard, unlike me, I'm lazy. All I ever do is the speed buff. But if you want to have all of your Bard Songs at all times, you'll end up getting critical damage buff. And then Overload. So at max melody, gain a small damage boost. That one would probably end up being a little bit more practical, I would think, instead of trying to get all 3 songs active at all times. But, I mean, that's just me. Generally speaking, you can see these abilities are pretty lackluster. So moving on to the Boomeranger. So Boomeranger has Blast Bow, triggers an explosion on each bow attack, which means that, you know, Boomeranger's abilities are cut in half because some of them work with melee, some of them work with ranged. Kind of stupid. Cyclone, the 3rd melee attack now pulls enemies in. That could actually be really good. They still need to rework Boomeranger so that it actually does decent damage, but whatever. And then Overstuffed Urn. So the Urn triggers an additional effect. So you know how your ultimate will end up having a random effect? Now it basically can have 2 different effects at the same time, which that's a tough call. I guess I would say any of those would work, just because generally you're not going to be playing on Boomer anyway, because the class is literally like a boomer class in the game. He's super out of date. But I mean, it's not like any of those abilities necessarily stands out one from another, I would say. So moving on to the candy bar, emergency snack spawns a cupcake when taking damage below 50% that refills the energy bar and resets ability cooldowns. That one could actually be pretty cool, I guess. Depends how random it is. Okay, well, either way, when you end up getting to 50%, which is basically going to end up being any time an enemy even hits you once, if it can end up resetting your cooldowns, I wonder how long the internal cooldown is of that buff. But that's not bad. I like that one. So sweet. Swirl Wind, which is your spin attack, now spawns a gumdrop as well, which they don't seem to actually explain what the gumdrop does. I think is that a movement speed one? I'm not sure what the gumdrop does. Maybe that's a healing one or something. They really, again, devs, explain this. Like, you can't use your internal terminology and expect players to understand what you're talking about. If you guys know what a gumdrop is, I mean, you can let me know in the comments, but be specific. Don't just say, gumdrop means this. Say, like, the bard ability and the gumdrop. Like, explain it as if somebody else is just skimming through the comment section and hasn't gotten to this portion of the video, okay? If you don't mind, but if not, that's okay. Spin to win. I love that reference. Reduces the energy cost of Swirlwind and removes the movement speed reduction. That one's probably my favorite, even though the ability is kind of terrible. So I don't know. I would say probably going to end up taking the emergency snack just because it's going to reset so you could spam your abilities, which means you could spam your ult, which would give everybody the attack speed bonus, right? So I don't know. Anyways, Vanguard. Champions congregate. So fired up and force flash now apply up to 2 nearby allies when used. So basically when you use your, where is it? Force flash, there it is. So this will end up giving you the movement speed and damage resistance, whereas when you're in ranged mode, that ability is going to give you attack speed. So what it's saying is it's going to give that same buff to 2 additional allies. So generally the most useless ability in the game, just because even though it's cool idea, Trove is all about being as fast as possible. So generally that's just useless, because the whole thing is I don't know any instance where, let's say you're in Delves even, I don't know any instance where I would rather have a Vanguard in there buffing me over one of the other classes that just does a better job, or just having more damage, right? I mean, I guess it's cool if you had like, maybe if you were playing co-op and you had like a Vanguard and a Bard or something together, because then you could both be buffing off of each other, but you're not going to be standing beside each other that much in the game. So anyways, combo. Energy Blast now applies the same damage increase that Eye Lasers applies. So basically when you laser something, you end up getting a damage buff, which is why Vanguard is so reliant on that. So what this is going to do is make it so that when you're in ranged mode, I guess you could just use your right click Energy Blast, which generally doesn't hit its target, and then you'll end up getting the same damage buff, which, okay, cool. They're trying to make it so that ranged mode is a little more viable, but I don't like that they're doing it behind a ring. So Heroes Stand, Laser Leap, and Heroes Charge grants a buff that heals while dealing damage for a short time. So, okay. So basically swapping through your ult is going to give you a little bit of life steal for a while, or I guess life regen or something. I don't know. Generally, some of the most lackluster abilities for sure. So moving on to Dino Tamer. Oh my dinos! Dino Buddy now spawns 2 minions instead of 1. That would be fine if the minions were actually useful, but they're not. Mr. Chomp Chomp. Dino Mount now spawns a T-Rex minion. That one I like because it's cool. Also, the T-Rex minion, as far as I know, is actually pretty decent damage. Deep Wounds applies a damage increase debuff to enemies dealt damage by Dino Tamer and their Dino Baby. Jeez Louise. Can you just say, if I, the Dino Tamer, damage an enemy, it's going to make the enemies that I tag have a debuff that increases the damage that they receive from everybody. Okay, there you go. English, do you speak it? So that would probably end up being the most useful ability, despite the fact that the T-Rex seems the coolest. So anyways, let's move on to Draco. So Dragon Force, love it. Great band, by the way. Summon 2 Dracolite allies when using your ultimate ability, which... that seems cool just because you're like the only problem with Draco and someone like the Tomb Raiser is that the damage output that you have on Draco is actually really significant, but it takes a while to get there because you have to have maximum allies and your ult all going on at once. So what this is going to do is, well, it's going to end up having your uptime a little bit decreased. So like the amount of time that it takes to end up doing maximum damage. My God, now my words are bad. So Firestorm, Spitfire has a chance to grant a buff that allows it to be freely used for a short time, which Spitfire is your right click, right? Yeah, okay. So I guess you could just basically have it so that you could potentially spam it for a short time, which is kind of cool. Dragonborn, I like that. When dodging, the Dracolite leaves a burned offering. So that would probably be better than the ultimate, I would think, because you would basically dodge and it would leave one of these on the ground. So you could just spam those on the ground while dodging at the same time on cooldown. And you could probably end up having all 6 of your Draco babies like very, very quickly. Because the ultimate, I think having 2 babies spawn from your ultimate is good for just normal dungeon farming, whereas being able to have the Dragonborn buff would probably be better for delves, which is generally what you're going to be using Draco for in the first place. So moving on to Gunslinger. Gunslinger's abilities got kind of bad, but we'll get into it. So Berserk Slinger, when using run and gun, gain Berserk, increasing damage and attack speed, but greatly reducing movement speed. So the funny thing is, run and gun, this ability, when we ended up seeing it on the test server, was ungodly strong, because it basically makes it so that the Gunslinger, which is already one of the strongest characters in the game, with using your ultimate ability, makes it so that you, guess what, have faster increase of attack speed and damage with using your ultimate. So yeah, but there was something, sorry, it escapes my mind, but I remember that there was something that they ended up nerfing greatly about that ability that made it useless. But I'm not 100% sure what that was. I'm sorry, guys. So anyways, moving on. Lock and load. Dodging gives an instant charge shot. Resets after a short cooldown. What's the cooldown, devs? Give us the number, dude. Stunning ammo. Charge shot attacks have a chance to stun. So basically, you would either use probably Berserk Slinger, or in most cases, you just wouldn't use any of these abilities. It ultimately depends. But the stunning ammo, I can speak from experience, is terrible and doesn't do anything. And the lock and load, I guess, could be good for just normal farming, because then you're not 100% reliant on your ult, because you would be basically getting charge shots every time you end up dodging. But we need to know what the internal cooldown is on that. So moving on to the Ice Sage. I don't know why these classes are just so all over the place in terms of how they're explained, right? So Nice Ice Baby. The Big Chill summons, Big Chill is your number 1 ability. So when you freeze everything. So Big Chill summons an ice crash on the player. This ice crash changes the ground to ice, which is useless outside of one of the other abilities that oddly complements it. So as cold as ice. While on ice, the Ice Sage gains additional crit hit and crit damage. So that first ability is absolutely useless unless you just so happen to have 2 Ice Sages that are coinciding with the same abilities that complement one another. It's stupid. Chill Out. Frozen Ward triggers at low health. Okay, cool. Moving on to the Lunar Lancer. These ones are actually some of the best that I've seen so far. So From the Moon. When in lunar form, basic attacks have a chance to spawn meteors from the sky. Remove that from the game. It's useless because when you're in lunar form, guess what? You already do some of the max damage. I do max damage on every hit. So everything's dead before the meteor from the sky ends up coming down. And it's not like an impressive, like, super meteor, Zhongli from Genshin Impact. No, it's just like some little, that's it. Cliffhanger. Dodging lowers the cooldown of grapple and empowered grapple. This ability has a short internal cooldown. Again, give us the number. And then Need for Speed. After using the buffed grapple, gain a speed buff instead of attack. Now, I want to point this out just because I think that this is a fantastic ability. It gives you insane amounts of movement speed. However, I feel like they could end up explaining this a bit better. There was a bit of, I don't know why so many people were arguing with me about this when I am absolutely 100% in the right. Get wrecked. I'm joking. So basically, like, if we look at the ability, it says after using Lunar Infused Grapple, gain a speed buff instead of a damage buff. And then if we use our number 1 ability and then we look at Infused Grapple, it says on impact deals heavy damage on enemies, triggering a physical damage buff, right? So basically what's going to happen is you're going to end up replacing the attack buff with a speed buff, but nowhere does it explain on the grapple anyways that you actually have to cause damage to an enemy in order to end up having the buff applied. So that was my argument, is they need to change the description of that or something. But anyways, the number 1 ability, the Lunar Leap, That's the one that specifically says, for a short time, your grapple becomes lunar infused, dealing increased damage. After damaging enemies, you gain an attack buff. So I feel like that ability needs to refer to the lunar leaps description rather than specifically saying about the infused grapple. That's my 2 cents towards it anyways, because it took me a while to figure out like why I wasn't applying the buff, and I thought that the gem was broken. But anyways, just wanted to clarify that because the movement speed that you get is quite significant. So Neo Ninja Clone Jutsu, the clone created by Shadow Flip, explodes at the end of its duration, which could end up being pretty good just because it's extra damage. But guess what? Everything's dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. Float like a butterfly. Gain slow fall for a duration after using final technique, which is your ultimate ability, which could end up being pretty good just because it means that you would end up basically being able to slow fall while you're speed farming and stuff like that, which, okay, cool. And then the last one is recharge, gain energy when dodging, which depends how much energy that gives. That could be the best one because you need energy in order to perform backflips anyways. But generally speaking, if you get like a really high tiered energy regen crystal ring, you probably would have a lot of energy to begin with. So moving on to the Pirate Captain. So Pirate Captain, all hands on deck. Using Man of War now summons a Parrot Cannoneer as well. So that's using your ult is going to summon a little minion that did barely any damage when it was on the test server. I'd have to try it out again on the main server, but I'm assuming it actually was buffed, and generally speaking it's going to be great because there was no limit on the amount of minions that you could have. So if you're constantly spamming your pots for your cooldown reduction, you could just spam Man of War over and over, and you could have like an army of these little guys before they all end up despawning, however, and just have increased damage on Pirate Captain. Like it's a game-changing ability. Avast Ye, basic attacks cause minions to attack the player's target, as well as applying a debuff, increasing damage done to it. See, that's a much better explanation than what they had on the Dino Tamer ability. Yeah. But anyways, that could end up being big mode because one of the problems with, Pirate Captain is that your turrets just target whatever they want. So now they actually will target the enemy that you're going for, which, yeah, I mean, it's not great. It's better than nothing, but whatever. And then Raiders. So First Mate has a chance to spawn doubloons when it hits enemies, which, yeah, I don't know. So basically, you would end up getting more and more doubloons, which isn't really much of a purpose because doubloons are used for all of your other abilities. I don't know. It's not the best. I'd say you probably want to go with all hands on deck or Avast Ye, just because of the damage buff that you'll end up getting, or the debuff that you'll put on enemies, because it means that it's going to help everyone in your group, not just you. So we're almost done, gamers. I'm sorry it's taking so long, but I told you we're in it for the long haul. So moving on to the Shadow Hunter, some of the most useless abilities in the entire game. Who came up with these? Sneaky Traps. When dodging, Shadow Hunter drops a stun snare, which, I mean, it's not awful. You know, the stun snare throws a nearby enemy, stuns all nearby enemies. Okay, whatever. So gives you more survivability, but that's not the problem with the Shadow Hunter. It's damage that we're lacking. Tactical Shot. Using a fully charged radiant arrow increases damage temporarily. That would be fine, except this ability doesn't work. And why would I ever use that over just doing normal damage? Like, it just, no. Just devs, please. They don't seem to understand anything about playing this class, which pisses me off. Unholy Heal. When enemies with Shadow Mark are defeated, the Shadow Hunter is healed a small amount. Make it heal me full, because then it would actually maybe be like useful, but otherwise it's not. Like, that is just, let's just pretend those abilities don't exist. So basically what I'm telling you is that if you craft Shadow Hunter rings, you can just put them on any class, because you sure as heck aren't going to polish the ring on your Shadow Hunter. Moving on to the Revenant. Speed Spears. Spirit Spears no longer slows the Revenant, so you could actually speed farm while you're doing this, which is pretty cool. Spirit Squad. Spirit Storm summons a group of tiny wraith spirits. Which one's Spirit Storm? Is that your ult? Yeah, Spirit Storm's your ult. I don't know the name of all of these, okay? I just always call it your ult. So basically that would summon a group of tiny little spirit wraiths, which is increased damage, so hey, I'll take it. And Vengeful Storm. When at low health, Spirit Storm is triggered automatically and has a long cooldown. I don't... Oh, I see. Spirit Storm. Yeah, I don't know why I thought it said Spirit Spears. That would probably be the best one, just because it means with Death Defying and everything. I mean, give us a long... It says has a long cooldown, what does that mean? Does that mean 10 seconds or does it mean a minute? Like, come on, guys. But either way, that would probably be the most useful just because of the increased damage that you would get from it. Or Spirit Spears with the movement speed, just because then it makes the Revenant a little more practical in terms of farming. Those abilities are varied and I like it. So moving on to the Tomb Raiser, these ones are actually pretty darn good. So Banshee Blast, basic attacks have a chance to summon baby banshees, which that's already big mode because that just means that you have extra minions and extra damage, right? So if you don't like that one, there's a more defensive one, Ghost More. Reduces energy drain from ghost form. So when you're in ghost form, you basically have like, what, 90% damage reduction or something ridiculous? And what it's saying is that it's going to drain your energy slower, which means you could just be invincible for longer. Yeah. And then Skelly Biggle Split. Using Bone Tirage, which is just summoning your little babies, has a chance to summon a larger Skeletal. And when this large Skeletal dies, it spawns little Skeletals, which all of those abilities are great. That's more what I'm talking about, because that complements the playstyle of the class, and just all of them, like, they either increase damage or they increase your invulnerability. Like, those are all really, really good abilities. Probably the best hidden effects of any class, just because there's not one that stands above the rest. They're all good, right? I would probably, yeah, I don't know. The Bone Tirage one where you summon a big boy skeleton, basically the maximum damage that I think Tomb Raiser would be able to do is have a full army of the big skeletons. You can do it. It's very, very difficult and it's very, very random. But once you have all of them, that would be like the maximum damage you could do, because you can get them purple health as well. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, refer to my Tomb Raiser tutorial videos. And then last but not least, we're moving on to the Fey Trickster. So Fey Trickster has Dance Partner. Fairy Dance summons a Fey Juggernaut that taunts enemies. Cool. At least it ends up complementing the character, because you want to end up keeping yourself from being tagged from enemies so that you can end up, you know, doing your increased damage. Mobilize. Fairy Dance summons one large enchanted staff that follows the player. So you'll actually have one staff following you around rather than just plant them down and then just leave them, right? So not bad. Trick, Trick, Boom. When taking damage, the Fey Trickster has a chance to spawn a glitter bomb at its location, and this glitter bomb has increased range and stun. Once again, all really, really good abilities. I don't like the Fey Trickster, so I don't care about any of this, but at least all of those abilities serve a purpose, right? So anyways, let's finally move on. So they just kind of mention about the, you know, the crystal rings themselves, and, you know, what of the gilded Ringcrafters tickets they end up giving, and so on and so forth, right? Not really anything super important to end up getting into. Signatory rings have 3 visual representations for each class, blah, 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 blah. Each crystal signatory ring box recipe has a search on market button next to it in the crafting table. Yeah. Okay. Finally, moving on to the next few sections. My lord, I told you it was going to be a big patch notes today, gamers. So, Bomber Royale updates. With the Polished Paragon update, we don't want Bomber Royale to be the best way for players to gain Paragon levels. So rather than end up buffing the amount of XP that you end up getting out in the open world to incentivize players to actually, you know, grind something other than Bomber Royale, they just ended up removing the XP from Bomber Royale in general. They didn't say any of that. I'm criticizing it because I think that it's stupid. There's a term for that way of thinking. I'm sorry, I don't know what the term is. It escapes my mind. But basically what I'm saying is that rather than them having positive reinforcement for the player, you know, a reason to not go into Bomber Royale because the XP is just better somewhere else, because that's the only reason people are doing Bomber Royale, is because the XP is just so freaking good in there, and everywhere else it just sucks, right? So if they ended up buffing the XP out in the open world to compensate, that would be great. But no, they just ended up removing the XP in general from Bomber Royale, which means it is no longer going to end up being the fastest way to level up a character. So those of you on console, you might want to benefit from that before this update hits, okay? It's stupid. Generally speaking, I know the real reason that they don't want to acknowledge for doing this is because there's too many bots in the game already. And what the bots will usually do is go into Bomber Royale because that's where they'll end up leveling up and, you know, getting flux and so on and so forth so that they can end up trading and doing this and that, right? So this is kind of their way of getting rid of that. And I wish that they would be a little bit more honest with that instead of pretending that it's some type of an internal thought like towards, oh, we don't want players progressing through Bomber. That's kind of like, it's like, dude, it's been in the game for years. There's no reason for that. They just don't want it so that you know, bots would end up going through Bomber Royale and then they would end up getting all the signatory items and so on and so forth, and it would basically end up ruining the market, right? So anyways, moving on. So the Bomber Royale merchant has been replaced by a workbench, and the Bomber Royale collection rewards are no longer tradable. So, yeah, okay. So sell all, like, spend all of your bomber tokens and sell all of those items, console players, because yeah, I basically have max tokens in my inventory and there's nothing I can do to get rid of them. That's why this is right here, because they ended up making it so that the maximum amount of season 1 and season 2 tokens is 300. So I can never get these tokens ever again because I'm already full and I can't spend them to end up getting any of the mounts and trading them to players. Yeah, there are a couple new rewards that they ended up adding, though. You can now craft the bomber bench. Okay, cool. And then there's ally up, which increases the size of your ally for 5 minutes. Okay, whatever. There's now a cap on all Bomber Royale season 1 and 2 tokens, up to 300. It's also a 1-by-1 ratio for the exchange rate, because normally you would have to spend 2 season 2 tokens for 1 season 1, and now they've changed it so that it's just a 1-by-1 ratio, which they should have had since day 1. There's a new daily that can be completed once each day to earn a Bomber Royale coin, rewarding 5 Bomber Royale season 2 coins. Useless for me. The rewards granted by Bomber Royale tomes have been increased to 25 coins, so instead of just giving 5. Awesome. New temporary banners are now available that award the top 10 to 100 spots for Bomber Royale, and these banners give no mastery or stats. It's just cosmetics, blah, blah, blah. So, store updates. The Geode tab has been replaced with the Crystal tab, so it's all related to crystal stuff. Why are Paragon Pinatas in the Crystal tab? That doesn't make any sense. All the Geode stuff totally makes sense, but why are these here? I don't get it. Good Lord. So expensive, so pay to win and stupid. Look at this. Well, geez, can you only, yeah, you could probably only buy these packs once, right? Or can you just buy them continuously? Because the amount of items that you get out of here is like so much better than just buying the pinatas outright from this jerk. Man alive. So anyways, Primal Paragon pack has been added. Give your Paragon boost, but yeah, so basically you can cheese your way to getting a bunch of levels and stuff. I'm going to have to find out whether or not this is a one-time purchase, because if it is, I will definitely get it. If it's a continuous purchase, then no. So anyways, additional updates. So there's quite a few things in here that are worth talking about. I'll kind of try and skim through these as best as I can just so that we can get to the point. So first and foremost, this is a pretty big one. So only 1 Leviathan biome can now spawn per world. Previously, you could find 2 Leviathan biomes per world. These biomes now spawn closer to the starting locations and are more distinct colored on the map. So this has huge ramifications that apparently the devs didn't get the memo. So sorry, but I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. The reason that they ended up adding the delves to the game wasn't because they wanted to make like some cool infinite cave system. Most of all, it was because what would happen with Trove is every weekly reset, the Shadow Tower would end up just flooding the server, because every time you would end up creating a Shadow Tower portal, it would basically create a new instance. And so thousands of instances would be constantly created on the weekly reset because everyone's trying to do their Shadow Towers, and thus the servers would be impacted by that very negatively. This is also true for whenever you end up going into an Uber world. It's generally going to either throw you into an instance where other players have already been, or is going to just create its own instance. And it's kind of on an internal cooldown with that, right? So my point is, as you can see, I don't like the fact that they made it so that there's less Leviathans, because it means that there's going to be more people trying to create more instances, and it's just one step forward, two steps back. Like, why did you even add the delves for the server stability if you're just going to make it so that people are going to be trying to create more worlds because there's less Leviathans? So this one's a real nice change. Killing Leviathans in the delves now counts towards the Leviathan badge, as well as the daily Leviathans killed leaderboard. Lobstroso in the delves at U8 depth or higher will now drop a fragile chitin torch and have a small chance of dropping its mount unlocker, the hover cycle recipe, and or the ancient torch. So basically they just finally made it so that when you end up finding Leviathans in the delves, they count as the same as Leviathans out in the open world. They're a lot weaker in the delves, but at least it means that there is a consistent method that you can end up actually farming the Leviathans. That actually gives me more incentive to go into the delves. Like, that's huge. I'm not even kidding, because generally speaking, I don't like fighting Leviathans out in the world. Just the fact that I could passively fight them in the delves is really, really cool. Despite the fact that I'm not going to like go out of my way to fight them or anything, but that's still really cool. I like that a lot. So starting at depth 110, XP coins can drop very rarely from the delves. These items can be consumed, and currently active class will receive 10,000 experience. These items cannot be traded, and if not consumed, will decay if the player is offline for 3 or more hours. So you would think that that sounds good, but you get like way more XP for like one dungeon out in the open world. So I haven't tested this, but if these XP tokens drop constantly, and I mean constantly, maybe, just maybe, in terms of XP, delves could end up being one of the best areas, because as of right now, because they ended up removing Bomber Royale, U10 would be the best way to end up gaining XP, because of the sheer amount of XP that you get from dungeons and stuff. And the argument that myself and many other people have about delves versus Uber worlds is that in an Uber world, I'm completing how many dungeons within the same time frame that I complete one floor on the delves, and I'm getting 10 times the amount of resources, 10 times the amount of XP. Not to mention delves in general. Okay, you can get a crystal 4 really rarely, but the chances of getting crystal gear in general is just so astronomically bad that generally speaking, it doesn't matter, and usually is not even like the problem that I have with the delves, besides the fact that it's so ugly, is the fact that it just is not worth it in the long term. Like, the only thing that you can get out of it is crystal gear, or crystal 4 gear, which at least they seem to be slowly incentivizing players in a more positive aspect to end up going into the delves, as I mentioned with, you know, the negative aspect of removing XP from Bomber Royale rather than giving us more XP out in the open world. But anyways, I need to test that out. I'll probably end up doing that on stream, possibly today, sometime this week for sure. Sorry, some dude's yelling at me that he's gonna throw down some pinatas in the club. So anyways, let's move on. So those of you that are at the super duper end game, you guys will probably like this, which means, you know, like what, 10 of you. Delve depths at 160 and up will have slightly more inert geo drop, useless. Delve floors with shadowy soul vaults have slightly more free range electrite crystals dropping from the high pressurized chests, again useless, and the chance for a boss's rare mount to drop will be slightly increased. That one at least is good, but the average player, there's literally like 10% of players are probably at 160 delves or higher, just because of how broken it is and how random delves are. Delve workbench can now finally be crafted at the Delve workbench under the Delve's recipe section, so we can actually put that in our club worlds now. Increased experience from most activities in U10 adventure worlds by 10%. Note that this increased experience only applies to characters that have already reached level 30. 10% is not as much as you would think. I guess it's cool that they added it, but still it doesn't compensate for Bomber Royale. Builders are gonna like this. So there's a new version of the mimic block that's been added to the game. The new adaptable mimic block will also mimic glowing and textured blocks. That's going to be huge for builders. Not that there's that many builders left in this game, but that's a very, very welcome change. Added 10 additional dev allies under the dev dream category. Who cares? They don't give mastery or anything. PvP matches in club worlds should be accessible again. I guess they were broken. So this one, you guys on console can still benefit from this. So Snowbite's favor ally, I didn't even catch that it did this until I ended up reading about it in the patch. So this ally, it gave 50% physical damage bonus, which made it like ungodly powerful. So they nerfed that to 15%. So if any of you guys on console have this ally, it should still give you the 50% physical damage, so you can be god tier. Yeah, and then generally speaking, I think that covers it, gamers. Really long patch notes. Oh my god. Thank you so much for watching, though, guys. Again, you know, I got lots and lots of stuff to end up covering with the new update. If there's any questions that you guys have, you can always hit me up in the live streams or in the Discord and stuff, just because comments, you know, I kind of read through them and then I have to move on, unfortunately. So I don't always catch some of the more dated comments and stuff. But if you do have any suggestions for videos you'd like to see, I'll put up a community post today as well on my YouTube community tab. And then, you know, you guys can just kind of let me know there so I can get a nice summary of like, oh, did I end up missing? Like, I need ideas from you guys, because I'm not sure, like, just because I know all of this stuff doesn't mean I necessarily covered it in a video. But I do still have a lot of planned videos that are going to be talking about, like, Lunar Lancer speed build, because now we've got the, you know, hidden effects of the rings and so on and so forth. Yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel, and have a great day, gamers. Bye bye.